Alright, so what you do in a flame test is you take a little bit of your pure salt, you put it on a wire, so you got a little wire that has a little glass handle on it, and then you stick it inside a Bunsen burner flame. Now what you're looking for is, this is your flame. What you're looking for is the initial color that you see. If you put anything in a flame, it sort of looks orangish yellow, and you can't really tell after the initial first blush of color. So you're looking for the initial first little flash of color. What the flame test does is it excites the electrons in the cation. It jumps up to a higher energy level, and then it drops down, and as it drops down, it releases light. So if you do it for sodium, if your cation is sodium, sodium gives a yellow flame. Okay, if you have the same cation as your as the sodium chloride, then your flame test for your unknown should also be yellow. I'm going to make up data here, and this may not necessarily match the data that the people that are actually doing the experiment will get, because I'm making up stuff and I don't want people who are actually doing the experiment to be colored by the results that I'm giving you here. So I'm just going to say that your flame is going to be unknown. The color of your unknown, I'm just going to say, is green. So that means that your unknown must not have sodium in it, because if your unknown had sodium in it, then I should get a yellow flame, but I'm getting a green flame instead. Alright, so then you're going to do a precipitation test. So the precipitation test tests for the the anion. So this is testing for the anion. And your anion test is this. So what you do is, if you have sodium chloride, aqueous, and you add silver nitrate to it, aqueous, your reaction will go to produce sodium nitrate, which is aqueous, and silver chloride, which is a solid. So this is a white precipitate. Silver chloride is a white precipitate. So in our case, we have an unknown, and we're going to react it with the silver nitrate. And once again, I'm going to make up data. So I'm going to say you get something, and then you get out silver chloride solid, a white precipitate, plus something unknown. Okay, so you have your unknown, you react it with silver nitrate, you're getting out the white precipitate that you expect for the silver chloride precipitating out of solution. And then you'd have something else, because you know, one of the things that you would have in this little parentheses is nitrate, and then you'd have your cation that was from your unknown. Okay, so that's the result that you're getting in your reaction. So then the question is, what do you actually have in your unknown, purified unknown salt? Alright, so going back to our little chart, let's go ahead and fill out the little chart. So we're going to, let me just zoom in for a minute here, and let me see, zoom in. Okay, so this is your purified salt, and this is your sodium chloride solution. So flame test color, I made up a data for the flame test color, and what I said is that your unknown has a green flame. your sodium chloride solution has a yellow flame. Alright, the ion test with the flame test tests for the cation or the anion. It tests for the cation. Same or different, you would say different. Okay, precipitate color. And so what I said is that your sodium chloride solution gives you a white precipitate. I'm going to abbreviate the precipitate as PPT. That's a common abbreviation that everybody uses for precipitate. I'm going to say also I gave you the results and I made these up, and what I said is that the precipitate color is also a white precipitate. Right, so the ion tested with the precipitate test is the cation. Is the cation same or different? And you would say the same. Alright, so that's the results that you should have on your little chart associated with your identifying your unknown. So then down here you have a conclusion part, and the conclusion that you're supposed to make is if your product is a sodium chloride, if both your cation and the anion are the same, then you would say it must be sodium chloride. And this would be true if this was yellow, white precipitate, then you would say it's sodium chloride. I can tell you right away from the results that I just made up, this can't possibly be the answer. And then MCl is if you don't know what the cation is, but you know that the anion is a chloride. NaX is if you know that the cation is sodium, but you don't know what the anion is. And then MX is if neither of those two tests were the same for the for your unknown. Okay, so you're going to look at the experimental results that I made up for you. You're going to look at it and you're going to tell me which one of these is the correct one. So you're going to circle, or you're going to check, let's say check, one of the boxes. Now, I usually don't take points off for experimental error, but in this particular case, since I already gave you all of the experimental results, and I always do this when I grade things, so if you have experimental results and you're asked to draw a conclusion based on the experimental results, your experimental result conclusions should match your experimental data. Now, I do take points off if you are not able to navigate going from your experimental results to what your conclusion should be based on your experimental results. Okay, so then the next part of our of your lab report form is I'd like you to complete the chemical equation, and I gave you the answer for this earlier in the discussion, so you should be able to answer that question. And then I have some names and formulas that I'd like you to give. So this is where you would give me the formula for the names that are given. So there are a bunch of names, and then I gave you some formulas, and I'd like you to give the names for those. And the how you do this is based on, there's a bunch of formulas and names. What you want to do is you want to look at page 94 of your lab text, and you want to also look at page 95 of your lab text for the naming for these things. And what you always do when you're naming things is you always have, just zoom out for a minute, you always have the cation name is on the left, and your anion name is on the right. And if you look at and you should have memorized, at least in my class I had people memorizing the names of the elements, and then there's some formulas that you have to memorize the formula names of, and those are what you can find on page 94 of your lab text. So let me stop this for a minute and I'll continue in a minute.